It's frustrating, right? I will share from my personal experience and also from some of my clients. It happens a lot of times because we are so too focused on about being good at what we do, on execution, which is important, right? I mean, we all need to do a good work. The problem is, especially when you grow into higher levels, manager, but even beyond that, it's not enough. People need to know you. People need to know your impact, because a lot of times those decisions are not just being made by your manager. And this is one of the common mistakes, right? We feel, oh, my manager, they know what I'm doing. I'm sharing with them every one-on-one and all that. That's going to be enough. It's not enough.
Welcome to the CTO Compass podcast. I'm your host, Mark Wormhort, tech strategist and executive coach. In every episode, we meet tech leaders, from startup CTOs to enterprise CIOs, to explore what it means to lead in tech today. They share their stories and their lessons so that you can navigate your own journey in tech. Let's dive into today's episode. Today's guest is going to talk about something that I've been through myself, and I think a lot of us have been through or are struggling with. It's that step from being full on in engineering, doing all of the hardcore work, whether it's infrastructure or coding, and then actually getting into leadership and that entire transition. Limor Bergman Gross, thank you. Welcome on the podcast today. Before we get into all the questions and everything that we just talked about, what do I need to know about your background? What can you tell me that tells us about how you ended up where you are today?
Okay, so first of all, hi, Mark. Pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for having me. What can I say? So I started my career as a software engineer. To be honest, I mean, I went to tech just because I didn't know anything better, right? It was just easy because I was good at STEM, and I started as a software engineer. At some point, I ended up in leadership, but it wasn't clear from the beginning. And I think this is something that I want to kind of, as I introduce myself, to share also with our listeners. Because, I have so many clients today. So today I coach, and I have so many clients who share with me, I don't know, is leadership for me? Is management for me? So I didn't know that I wanted to become a manager. And, I realized that only after I grew as an IC, and at the point that I got into staff engineer, I started thinking, okay, what's next? And I didn't see myself becoming a senior staff, a principal engineer, distinguished engineer, depending on the company, right? Each company has their own. And then I became a manager, and I grew as a manager of engineers and then a director of engineering. Along the way, started a family. I have 4 children. So yes, it is possible to have both. This is another question, that a lot of mainly women kind of debate with. Along the way, I moved countries. So I'm in Israel right now, but we used to live in the US for 9 years.
That's quite, and you've held you've held director roles at a well-known company, I would say, DigitalOcean. Tell us a bit about that period when you worked over there.
Wow, it was an incredible period. First of all, DigitalOcean was my first fully remote work. So up until then, I worked mainly in office. And I remember that when they reached out to me at the end of 2015, I saw that the position location was New York. And I said, okay, back then I lived in Denver, Colorado. And I said, no, I'm not going to move. So it was, first of all, my first fully remote position, managing people remote, which at first I didn't even think possible. And it was also my first smaller company. It wasn't that small. It was about 150 people startup when I started. And I liked the ability to make an impact, to be more in control, less processes, more freedom. It was incredible time.
Nice. Yeah. And I think that helps if you actually have that background yourself. I mean, you have this director role. It was, DigitalOcean is a company that we all know very well. I've been a customer, not anymore. I've moved on, but I've been a customer for years myself. I think it's something that we all know well. So it's incredible. You talked about the people that you coach and the people that you work with and people that ask you, should I become a manager? Do I want to become a manager? How do you answer that question?
That's a tricky question because it depends. It depends whether you are passionate about solving technical problems yourself, about architecture, about coding. How much are you passionate about it? versus working with people and enabling others. I think that's the main distinction.
Yeah, and I think if I look at myself, first 10 years of my career, I was that first person, right? The person that loved technology. And I think for me, it actually changed over my lifetime that passion for people grew with me. I would say I still had the passion for technology, but the passion for people actually evolved as I got older. And maybe that's it. I don't know if you see that. Does age affect it?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's about age, or like you've been there, done that. Although, nowadays, Mark, because of AI, I feel like things are changing so rapidly. So it's always going to be interesting. And I do think that even when you grow in leadership, you still remain technical, but in a different way.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the main question to ask someone, if they're thinking about it, how are you going to feel when you're not the one solving the problem yourself? Are you able to let that go? Because I know it's so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard. I remember it as well when I first had to let go, and having to depend on other people to solve the problems who are, and at least in your personal opinion, not as good as you are. Of course,
yeah, I know.
It's what we all think. I know it's what we all think, and it's never true, but still, that's the feeling that we have. The next thing that you talk about is people that have made that decision, that want to grow into that director role, manager role, director role, and they're not getting there, or they're failing to get there. What happens normally when people just don't get that promotion?
Yeah, and it's frustrating, right? I mean, I will share from my personal experience and also from some of my clients. It happens a lot of times because we are too focused about being good at what we do, on execution, which is important, right? I mean, we all need to do a good work. The problem is that, especially when you grow into higher levels, right? I mean, manager, but even beyond that, it's not enough. People need to know you. People need to know your impact, because a lot of times those decisions are not just being made by your manager. And this is one of the common mistakes, right? We feel, oh, my manager, they know what I'm doing. I'm sharing with them every one-on-one, and all that's going to be enough. It's not enough.
So what is enough? What do you do?
What is enough? Yeah. So I think it's about being strategic, first of all, about what you want and what's the impact that you're going to make. Building strategic relationships. So thinking about who are the important people that should know you and know your value to the organization and the impact that you're going to make. And by the way, those are not necessarily people in leadership positions. Like, for example, some of the times they're architects, staff engineers, senior staff. Like, it could be multiple people, not just people in leadership positions. And building those connections genuinely from place of curiosity, from understanding what they do, how you can help, bringing perspective. So it's a process, right? You build relationships that will be genuine and provide value. Another thing is, like, how can you actually make an impact at, let's say, a director level before you're actually promoted? I can share that I always waited for someone to tell me, right? Okay, now you're promoted. This is your responsibility. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to wait, because there are always opportunities to solve problems that no one is solving. You just have to identify those and start solving them. Show that you are a material for whatever it is, manager or director.
So just show upfront that you're ready before getting the title and before getting the promotion. On the first part, you said the networking, the stakeholder management, it sounds so artificial. And I know that's the feedback that I get from a lot of people. It sounds so artificial. I have to reach out to this person to tell them how good I am, or I have to go and show my project to this other person just to expand my network, or to actually take credibility for it. And I don't feel comfortable. What do you tell people to that objection?
And that's totally natural, and I agree. You don't want... So I'll just share a quick story. I had a senior director at one of the companies I worked at, and he was just focused on making himself visible. and scheduling one-on-ones with different kind of executives. And it didn't work because it just, okay, I'm just going to spend your time to hear me out and all that. You have to find people that you can build relationships that are based on mutual benefits, and really be curious. First, to focus on them. What is important to them? What problems do they have? How can you help? Because we tend to think inward about what we want to achieve. Oh, I want visibility. I want this person to know me, so I'm going to talk with them and share what I'm doing. Think the other way around.
So thinking about what the other people, what they need, what they want, and then helping them and just building credibility by being there for them.
like for me, it led me to taking on these different initiatives, right? I mean, I don't remember all the details, but we had like a problem at DigitalOcean with test flakiness, and the environments were not reliable. So I initiated like a working group from different kind of parts of the organization, and we try to tackle that. And it wasn't something that anyone asked for, and that's how I started building relationship with other people. The best is to try to be curious and figure out other problems that we can solve together.
Nice. And about your own career, when did you get that one promotion that for you made the difference from I'm a really good engineer to now I'm suddenly a team lead or a manager? And how did that promotion happen?
Yeah, so I think the meaningful change in my career was when I became a manager for the first time. And it happened in a timing that would look the worst. So I was very frustrated with my career. I was, a staff engineer for several years, and I knew that I wanted to become a manager, but I didn't know how to do that. And what happened was that I was pregnant actually with my second child, and an opening for a manager happened, right? The worst timing. I was 8 months pregnant. And I was like, okay, that's a bummer. I'm not going to get it. That's what I thought. And luckily for me, my husband actually told me like, so what? Go and nominate myself. What's the worst that can happen? And I remember like going there, and I felt ridiculous. I felt like I'm making a fool of myself. Long story short, eventually I got that role because one of my former managers really advocated for me when I was already at home on maternity leave, and I got that position. And that was a big jump for me because I had to start leading a team. It was relatively large. As a first team, it was 15 people. I was terrified. I had no clue what I was doing. But that was a major leap for me.
And how did you make that transition from just hands-on staff engineer to just suddenly managing 15 people?
That was tough. To learn. Not the recommended way to do it, I'll tell you. I mean, originally I was supposed to get a small team, and I don't know, something happened when I was on maternity leave, and they decided like to broaden the scope. That's not recommended, but I kind of had no choice. I had to deal with it. So I was pretty terrified. And I remember like talking with my manager at the time, and I told him this, I mean, I've never managed. Now you give me a large team, give me some help. He gave me a coach. She was not really helpful, to be honest, because she didn't come from tech background and she never managed before. So she was like asking me a lot of questions. It was very frustrating. And then I found a mentor. I found a manager within the company, a very experienced one. It wasn't like originally supposed to be like a formal mentoring or anything. I just reach out. Hey, can I talk to you? I have this, I don't know what to do here. So I started formulating those mentoring relationships, and he really helped me a lot. Every time I was doing something I felt uncomfortable with, I went and talked to him.
That's a great piece of advice for anyone that wants to get the promotion. And I made a ton of mistakes.
I made a ton of mistakes.
That's a given. After any promotion is in a new role, you have to make those mistakes to learn. Yeah. I think seeking out a mentor, I think is good advice for anyone that either wants to go into management or just starts in management. Before we jump back in, here is something that I've learned from over 30 years of working in technology. The hardest part of leadership, it's not the technology, and it's not even the people or the teams. It's often that you're at it alone by yourself. There's no one in the room that fully gets what you're dealing with. There's no one that you can trust to discuss your decisions with. If that sounds familiar, find me on LinkedIn, Mark Wormgoor, and tell me what's in your mind. There's no pitch, just a discussion with somebody who's sat in that chair as well. Let's get back to it. A lot of the people or objections that I hear about this, or the people that I also coach with, they say, I'm just too busy. I have all this work that I need to do, and I don't have time to build relationship with others, or I don't have time to be more strategic just because there is so much hands-on work, day-to-day work that I have to do. What do you tell them?
First of all, very natural. I'm sure they're busy. I think that the problem is the question they need to ask themselves: what am I busy with? So first, before you even, and that's clearly articulate the problem. You have too much on your plate, so you don't have time for the important things. Being strategic, right? Thinking strategically, you have to do that as a leader. And that's not optional. And you have to first look at how you spend your time. There are common things, common challenges. Not delegating enough, which is always like a challenge, right? As you grow, you have to feel more comfortable to let some things go and be willing to trust someone else. They will do a good job, and they will not do it the way you would do it. They will do it differently. And it's hard. It's always hard. Second thing is prioritization, which I faced all the time. Everything is important. Everything is urgent. Everything is critical. And one of the toughest decisions as a leader is to actually decide what you're not doing right now. And I've seen that at all levels. How do you prioritize? Third thing, pushing back, especially for newer leaders. When a product person or someone tells you, oh, we must do this now, do you challenge them? Do you ask them, okay, why? Can you share more? What's going to happen if we're not going to do this feature right now? Pushing back, you have to really defend. Those are, I would say, the main things: not delegating, not prioritizing, and deciding what not to do, and not pushing back.
Those are three. I agree with all three. I think those are very simple. I think that they're hard to do in real life, right?
It's hard, I know.
Push back as well, but
it's hard, but you have to start practicing. And I believe in small steps, right? Taking small steps. So next time you speak with someone who asks you to do something, ask them some questions. So start small. Start practicing it.
Nice. And then after that promotion, so you have that promotion, you started managing a bit of a large team for the first team lead role, but you also grew into director roles. How do you promote all of this within your own team? How do you give feedback, and how do you grow your own team to do exactly what you just said?
Yeah, once you do that, you have to identify who are first of all, I mean, leadership is about identifying each person, what's going to work with them, what's not going to work with them, what they care about, and how you can grow them in a way that is meaningful to them. And I'll give an example. Like I had someone, a brilliant engineer, and he was a tech lead, right? So he was really good at architecture and everything like that, but he really didn't like to present anything. He was very introverted, liked to solve problems, didn't like so much to lead others. So I have to find a way. It's all about trying to understand, okay, this person is really good at something. That's where they're passionate, and that's going to be the right growth for them. So for him, for example, it was more, okay, architecture, solving technical problems. I had to identify someone else that had more tendency to lead people, to talk with people, and encourage. It was actually a woman engineer, encouraging her to step up. So you have to kind of identify and challenge them. Always challenge with something that maybe they feel uncomfortable doing. Not terrified, but uncomfortable, and challenge them to do that. And coach them along the way. One of the things, I would say, Mark, not telling people how to do things, challenging them and coaching them. We have a tendency to want to give people all the answers, and then they become dependent on us. So I would say also, if someone is struggling with giving feedback, yeah, you can have some discussions with them, but eventually they have to practice it.
Yeah, true. And what I love about today, and I think that's not in my career, it's 2026 now. You can just ask AI anything, right? So if I'm not good at giving feedback, you don't have to go to your manager and say, how do I give feedback? You can ask ChatGPT and you'll get a pretty decent, a pretty decent answer, I would say. So
for sure, yeah. Giving feedback is actually something that is very difficult, especially for engineers. And I do a lot of work on that. And we do sometimes role plays.
What's your what kind of advice do you give on giving feedback to people? What's your prescription?
First of all, I share usually two resources that I really like. One is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. I really like her book. And the other one is SBI, the SBI framework, Situation, Behavior, Impact. So the thing I would say with feedback is really hard because on one hand, you want to be good. You want to be nice. You don't want to hurt anyone. But on the other hand, you have to be direct. How to combine those two? And there's no way around it. You have to share feedback in a clear way that can be understood, that they will understand what you want to say. So SBI is really useful to share hey, I noticed that in a meeting you were doing XYZ and whatever the impact was. And pause. Don't try to solve it at once. This is another thing. We try to solve everything. Just say what you want to say as much as possible based on facts and not emotions or anything. Pause and let the other person react to that and ask them how they see it, how they feel about it. I know it's hard to talk about feelings as engineers, but we're working with people, so we have to be careful about it and sensitive enough.
And Radical Candor, just for those of us who haven't or are not aware of it, what is that?
Yeah, Radical Candor, it's a book by Kim Scott, and it talks, she has 4 quadrants about how do you kind of, and it has 2 axes. One of them is about how direct you are versus indirect, and one of them is how kind of sensitive you are to people. I probably not describing the best way, but and Radical Candor is where you care personally and challenge directly. It's exactly where you should be, and the balance between being empathetic but also being direct.
So giving very direct feedback, but with full empathy and care for the person that is receiving that.
Yeah.
I love that. Nice. You also work, or mostly work, with women that are in engineering positions, that are in leadership or want to go into leadership. How does that differ from all the men that I'm sure you've also worked with?
Yeah. So first of all, every person is different, but there are several things I see with women, and I face that personally too, right? First of all, we are fewer. So always when you're different, right? When I work with mostly men around me, so I felt okay, I'm not exactly like everyone else. I'm different. Maybe they like sports, and so it's about sensing of belonging and feel comfortable and think you're worthy and you belong there. So it's a lot about confidence and feel yeah. And also thinking about you're different, but it's actually a positive thing. It's not a bad thing. I'm relatively quiet, introverted. I'm not saying that there are not a lot of men engineers that are like that. And I used to think about it as a deficiency, and I learned that it's actually a strength because I'm very empathetic. I'm a great listener. I ask a lot. So kind of identify, so women, a lot of times we tend to judge ourselves too harshly and compare ourselves to men and think, because I'm not like that person, something is wrong with me. Another thing is we wait. I mentioned it before. We wait for permission. We wait for someone to tell us we are ready, and we're afraid to be proactive and to be bold. I think men are bolder in general, from what I've seen in tech. And the men I managed, they're not afraid to say, I want promotion, I want more money, I want this, I want this. And women, a lot of times we feel uncomfortable with that. We feel uncomfortable also to talking about our achievements.
If we then go to you're in that promotion, you're past this promotion, you're now in this first role, and like you said, you have to manage your team, give them feedback, but also you suddenly have to manage all these executive stakeholder relationship and have all these difficult conversations. How do you coach people to start having those discussions, which is very different?
This is different, and it's really hard to say in general what to do, because it really depends on the executives and how to approach them and the company. I always start, and I mentioned it before, about what's in it for them, what they care about. Sometimes there is a gap between what we see as important and critical to what executives look at. Something very common, right? As engineers, engineering leader, we care a lot of times about engineering efficiencies, engineering excellence, tech debt, and all those stuff, which usually executives don't care. So they want to hear, okay, how do you make me more money? How do we make the customers happy? So the business side of things, where we a lot of times look at like the executions and all that. So a lot of times it's a gap about how do you actually speak in a language that someone in executive role will care about. And we're not taught that those things, right? I mean, we know how to solve problems. We know how to look at technologies. We're not taught how to, think in business thinking. And we have to start doing that.
So how do you learn that? Because indeed, I mean, we can talk about sprint points, and we can talk about tech debt and about Jira or whatever is going to happen next. This is so different from everything that we've learned in the past 10 or 20 years as engineers.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, now we can learn pretty much everything like on AI, right? But what I did, I was just curious. So I started meeting with different people at different functions and talk with them about what is, and that kind of serves also the purpose of building the relationships, right? But what do they care about? What keeps them up at night? And being curious, hearing about, also attending, a lot of times there are those company town halls, all hands, whatever they are called. And a lot of times we say, it's a waste of time. Oh, it's boring. But sometimes, during those sessions, the company leadership share a lot of things. And we can learn a lot about that. Like, what are the priorities for the company? So the more we stay attuned to that, we ask questions, we stay curious, we meet with different people, we can learn more about it.
I love how your guidance about the communication that we talked about at the beginning, about building your network, expanding your network. It's also just about asking them for their priorities and this is the exact same feedback that you're giving for after that promotion. You want to expand. Again, you want to expand your network and build your network and understand. And again, it's just about asking the questions and understanding their interests. And I love that. So
yeah, I remember, by the way, that we had those in Digital Oceans, we had different kind of, I don't remember how they were called, like all hands or whatever. And people were actually asking a lot of questions. Like we had a CFO present and people were curious about it. So even you can ask some of the executives in your company, like CFO, for example, okay, tell us, share with us a bit from what you can share about what's going on, about maybe some of the terms that we're not familiar with. So you can start really getting more up to speed with that.
Yeah, nice. Especially in all hands. Yeah, I think I remember all those sessions, and they're very educational about understanding the rest of the business that isn't technology. A quick one before we continue. If you're getting something out of this conversation, please hit the subscribe button below. That way, other tech leaders can find us as well. I would really appreciate it. Let's get back to it. And if you look back, what are some of the mistakes that you've made where maybe you were too focused on engineering or on the technology and maybe not enough on the leadership side of things?
I think I just waited too long, to be honest. I just waited too long. Instead of if I took myself like 20 years ago, even more, I would just think about, okay, what do I actually want? And keep asking that like on a regular basis. how do I get there? So exactly what I shared today, I wish I was starting doing that, right? Because I was just doing what I was told to do for many years. Just, okay, that's my role. That's what my manager told me to do. I just did it.
And what at some point changed that for you? How did that change?
What changed is that I felt stuck. So I told you, like, before I was first promoted to a manager role, I was stuck for several years. I was very frustrated. Actually, I was thinking about leaving. And after I started managing, I realized, okay, I asked and I got management role. So I have to start thinking about it, about what I want, and have those conversations and think about who I need to. So that kind of shifted also my way of thinking.
Nice. So and you said originally maybe you wanted to leave, but then, and I think you got your first big promotion. How did they go? Why did you stick around and then suddenly get promoted? Was it just because there happened to be an opening, the manager role you talked about?
In my case, what happened was that I was just lucky enough that I had someone who managed me in the past, who knew me, and really recommended me for that role.
Nice.
If it wasn't for him, I would probably not get this role, because the hiring manager didn't know me very much. And as I said, like, I was just a pregnant woman going on maternity leave. What are the odds that someone would, I mean, we can walk around that, but it's like, it's a challenge, right? Women that are raising kids, it's still in a way a disadvantage to us. I wish it wasn't, but to be honest, I mean, I felt like that's not a good timing. And I had women that I managed that were pregnant. Again, it's not that it should hold back your career, but sometimes it does.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's, I mean, especially if you have to step out for like 4 or 5 months at least. You're out of the company, you're out of the role for several months. I mean, it's that's not something you can skip, and it's hard. I can imagine.
Yeah, and I would say another thing. After I started managing for the first time, a few years later, we moved to the US and I had to start all over. Basically, I left my job. And it forced me actually to do something I was really scared about, right? To move to a new country, to leave a comfortable job and start all over again. Not all over, but start looking for a job in a new country. And I think that helped me grow. I mean, although it was scary and hard. So sometimes doing those things really is what you need to do, whatever scares you, right? If you think about, oh, I'm not happy, I'm stuck here. I'm not saying that every time the answer would be leave. But a lot of times we are not even thinking about it because we're so scared of making that leap of, oh, now I have to start interviewing. Now I have to start polishing my resume. And sometimes those are things that we have to do.
One of my coaches once said, and I love this advice, the answers that you're looking for are often in the things that scare you.
Yeah.
Right? The things that you're avoiding because they're scary, you don't want to do them. And often that's exactly where you're going to find the answers that you're probably looking for, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's true.
So what other topics regularly come up that's about this growth from engineering into executive leadership? What are like the recurring topics in your coaching?
Conflicts. That's a big one, right? I mean, how to deal with people that are not like us. It's really hard. And there are a lot of different people in tech, in engineering, a lot of personalities. And we tend to think those are jerks and they're bad people. They're not always, but a lot of times, right? We have this conflict with someone and think, oh, they're bad. They're doing this on purpose. How do we deal with all those people?
And how do we? How
do we? Yeah, that's hard. By trying as much as possible. So I think, and I'll be honest, I had worked with some jerks in my career. Excuse my language, but I had that. Not always it helps, but like at least I tried to come with curiosity and understand their point of view and their reasoning why they're doing certain things. A lot of time people act the way they do because they have insecurities or whatever it may be, and that's how they behave. They become aggressive, defensive, whatever. And even if you cannot influence them and you cannot necessarily solve the problem, at least just realizing that it's not anything to do with you, because a lot of times that can really impact on your confidence, especially for women. Like I had, I won't forget the first time I worked with the people with a team in Russia many years ago. And one of the Russian engineer wrote something that really hurt my feeling in a code review. And I don't think he meant to hurt my feeling. But the way he wrote it, it was very direct. So a lot of times we just make those in our head, a lot of translations about what the other person wrote or said. And say, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I'm not this, I'm not. And we take it on ourselves instead of saying, okay, that person, that's the way they communicate. I'm not justifying them, but it's them, it's not me. And it really helps with the confidence.
That it's not necessarily about you, it's their communication style, feedback style.
Yeah, and the best you can do is try, again, to be curious, to be open-minded, to do what you can. I'm not saying you cannot change the world, you cannot fix anyone. And sometimes with some people, it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. Sometimes just approaching them and having a conversation and trying to understand their motivation and saying like, we're on the same page, like we have similar goals, let's work together. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it doesn't.
And that's still okay. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Then you have to figure out what to do about it, right? I mean, if you work in a toxic environment and you really suffer and those people are unbearable and you tried what you could, sometimes you have to make changes. But sometimes you can figure things out.
Yeah, nice. So I think you said about visibility, about building those relationships, about being more empathetic. And I think you also talked about different people. I think we have different people in tech.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get promoted, I feel that it gets a lot worse. When you start talking to salespeople, to CFOs, you just mentioned them there.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it then? When people become in tech, we have this shared understanding of what the world looks like. Maybe in technology, we get to these other people that are so out there, like sales managers, directors, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's you have to somehow bridge the gap in how what you're doing and what you care about is eventually meaningful to the other side, if at all. Like, hopefully it is, right? Because you work at the same company, so you should eventually have some shared goals. And if a shared goal is to sell more of something, increase revenue, so you have to find a way how you can align on something.
Yeah, I think I've also struggled with that. I think with sales that's easier because it's easy, right? They want to sell something, there's money. CFOs I've always struggled with just because they have like one incentive and it's just to cut down costs. And well, in technology we always want to spend more, so it feels like there's never a common ground that we can find. But that's I think that's just
hard.
The reality of life. So so what is it exactly that you do? What kind of people do you work with? What kind of people do you coach, and what is it exactly? Do you coach teams as well, and how do you work with them? What does that look like?
Yeah, I work mainly with individuals, and usually they are leaders in tech, usually in engineering. I had people also in other functions, not just in engineering, but usually they're in engineering, in leadership. It could be a manager, director, it could be even an IC, depending. And I help them with either strategy about the promotion of or growth and what it means to them, or figuring out what it means to them. Leadership, different leadership challenges that they face. That's another thing that comes up a lot, right? Someone is in a role and they need help. They need someone to talk to. A lot of times their manager is not going to be, maybe doesn't have enough time. Maybe they don't feel comfortable enough. So in a way, I'm like their manager, but from the outside.
And that reminds me, one of the things that I often see, and especially more senior leaders, is loneliness, right? Because there's no one that you can really
that's
talk
true.
to. How do you see that as well?
Yeah. One of my clients that is debating whether to become a manager, she had this thinking, oh, if I'm going to become a manager, I'm going to be alone.
Yeah.
In a way, it's true. In a way, not entirely, right? Because you're always going to have colleagues, but you work with. But yeah, in a way, it's the more you go up, the lonelier it gets.
Yeah. And I think that's where a coach like you really helps as well, to be able to just talk to somebody and vent and talk about everything that's going on.
Yeah, a coach, or sometimes it's about finding a community. There are a lot of Slack communities and online, and also conferences, and meet people in similar roles, similar situations that you can talk to.
Yeah,
that also helps a lot.
So, and if we then bring it all down to this one question, I'm maybe an individual contributor still, I'm an engineer, or maybe I'm a manager and I'm looking for my next promotion, but I feel just stuck in the execution and I just don't know where to go next. So what's the one or two things that they should absolutely stop doing or start doing now?
Yeah, stop doing busy work. So everything that they do, they have to figure out what's the impact of what they're doing. So, and a lot of times we do a lot of busy work that doesn't really get us anywhere. And focusing on impact and doing things that matter to the organization, to their manager, whatever. I mean, because in order to move to the next level, you need to show that you are capable of operating in that level. So you have to focus on things that matter to your leadership.
I love that. If people want to find you online, they're looking for advice, maybe even a coach, where can people go and find you?
On LinkedIn, probably the best. Yeah. LinkedIn. I'm there. Okay. Try to be as active as I can.
I'll put your LinkedIn in the comments below. Absolutely. Limor, thank you for joining me. It's been incredible bringing you on and having you on. And thank you for sharing the stories and all of your advice.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
As we wrap up another episode of the CTO Compass, thank you for taking the time to invest in you. The speed at which tech and AI develop is increasing, demanding a new era of leaders in tech. Leaders that can juggle team and culture, code and infra, cyber and compliance, all whilst working closely with board members and stakeholders. We're here to help you learn from others, set your own goals and navigate your own journey. And until next time, keep learning, keep pushing, and never stop growing.